Welcome to Relationships as Spiritual Practice, Bridging the Secular and Spiritual. With your host, Alia Lowe Chardet, founder of Mindful Compassionate Dialogue and the Wise Heart Community.
Hello, thank you for being with me here today. I'm glad you're here. Today, I would like to cover one of the basics and one of the most important basics that I realize I haven't talked with you about yet. It's so central and just simple in a way that I forget to talk about it. And it is the way out of stuckness in a conflict, and it is a path to greater freedom and flexibility. And it's an incredible sense of empowerment. Opens the door to collaboration and creativity. It is the very simple distinction between universal needs and the strategies to meet them. In Nonviolent Communication, founded by Marshall Rosenberg, he, as far as I know, is the only person, I'm sure it's happened before, but as far as I know, the only person to name a comprehensive list of universal needs that lives in every human being and probably many other beings. This is critical because a universal need is at the root of everything you do. Sometimes I like to call universal needs universal guiding energies. Energies that direct your attention to serve life. And most of you listening probably are familiar with this list already. I mean, you can find it on my website, certainly. There's a list of, it's called Feelings and Needs List. And even that needs list isn't comprehensive. Everybody's needs list is a little different because there's a little difference of opinion out there, of course. And also, I try to make the list readable, so I take out some synonyms there. So even when you're offering something to someone else, you're meeting a need of yours to contribute, a very important need. Marshall Rosenberg would say, actually, autonomy and contribution, synonymous with meaning and purpose, are the most important human needs, or the needs that, when those aren't fulfilled, our thriving takes a very obvious hit. So the list includes needs like autonomy, purpose, meaning, contribution that I named, connection, trust, community, honor, care, focus, creativity, being heard and seen, belonging, safety, support, authenticity, inclusion, love, of course, and many more. Empathy, understanding, clarity, information. So as you're moving through the world, you're attending to one need or another. Learning, I want to name learning because that's Most likely a need that brought you here, or maybe hoping for inspiration. Your need for inspiration brought you here. And so when you can name these needs clearly for yourself without referring to the strategy or the context in which they're arising, there's a certain amount of freedom there. You begin to feel a spaciousness. And the opposite is true. As soon as you say, I need responsibility from you, and you name the strategy of from that person, now can you already feel when I say, I need the responsibility from you? There's a pull, right? There's a tension because you know in your heart, you know that you don't control others and you can't and you weren't meant to. And when you try to, it creates suffering for everyone. On the other hand, when you say to complete, let's say, this project, my primary need is co-responsibility. And then you say to the person, let's say that's not meeting that need. When I see that you haven't completed the steps you committed to 2 weeks after the deadline, when I notice that in the last 4 phone calls I made or messages I sent to you, you've answered 1 and it's been a week. My needs for responsibility, co-responsibility are not met. There's probably other needs not met, right? And so then you would propose a new way forward. But first you would probably ask the person, what's happening with you for this project? Because at the beginning, I thought you were quite enthusiastic and had a lot of willingness. So I feel confused. And the first thing I would like is clarity. Often when we open a dialogue about an unmet need, we start with this attempt to understand what is the experience the other person is having. And, anything could be happening. Maybe their partner just got diagnosed with very serious medical issue. Or maybe they thought their responsibilities were one thing and you thought it was another. Or maybe they just changed their mind for some other reason. So getting that clarity will help you decide whether you want to enter into a new negotiation of how to care for the need of responsibility. And what happens there is it also, when you don't connect the need and the strategy in our example here, and there's that space, you realize, or you can become aware of, the fact that you want to do the project with someone who also wants to put a certain amount of energy, responsiveness, doing things at a rate that you find inspiring, that meets your need for responsibility. And if that someone isn't the person you started with, then you have the opportunity to look for someone else. And so you might have some mourning around that, some grief, disappointment. And at the same time, you can open to other ways forward. So a lot of our suffering happens when we believe, especially the unexamined belief, right? That a certain need has to be met in this one single way. Often that one single way is a person, right? With relationships, your need for intimacy and touch has to be met with this person that you want to have an intimate relationship with, and this person has told you no, for example. That attachment you might have to meeting the need with that person will be so powerful that it's just heart-wrenching that they've said no to what you want. And other things are at work with that particular example, right? Our psychological attachment systems, a sort of energetic entwining that we do with someone we want to be intimate with. And those things are painful to untangle, just as they are. They're just especially painful when you believe that was the one best strategy to meet your need, that person. Okay. So it's not quite so easy as it sounds. Unfortunately, the concept is quite simple. Oh, you have a set of universal needs. And anytime you have a preference about an activity, a material thing, or a person, or a decision, all that are the strategies you're engaging in, probably your preferred strategies, to meet a need or a particular set of needs. Great. That means that if one of those strategies to meet your needs doesn't work or falls through, then you can look for another. So there is a beautiful simplicity and a potential ease and flexibility in that, right? And at the same time, when you get so caught in, I want it this way, I want things to go this way, when you tell yourself that, you might forget to disentangle the need from the strategy. And so one of the most basic practices we do here at Wise Heart and in the community of mindful, compassionate dialogue and the community of compassionate communication or nonviolent communication is empathy, which involves contacting our experience with a warm curiosity, any aspect of experience, and most centrally, identifying the need. So, besides working back from your strategies, decisions, preferences, etc., to find a need, it's especially useful to work back from any form of reactivity to find your need. As you're reactive, angry about what someone's doing, they shouldn't be doing that, and then you work your way all the way back to the need, it gives you this opportunity to grieve. Oh, that person's doing it that way. You probably feel sad, scared, or hurt underneath that reactive feeling, which is still valid. Reactive feelings are valid. And once you are able to move into the vulnerability of the sadness or the hurt or the fear and be with the need, then you start to move into acceptance and you say, okay, that is not the way to care for that particular need, to care for myself or someone else in a particular way. Let me look for another way. Ooh, such a more peaceful life when you're not trying to force reality to fit into some picture that you created, probably out of your conditioning, if we're just being honest with ourselves, right? Hopefully, we have lots of inspired moments when a vision comes to us about how something unfolds, and then it unfolds that way. I like it when that happens. And we also have lots of conditioning to deal with that we're untangling and disentangling from, and that's part of how we're building our spiritual muscles, right? The gymnasium is seeing our conditioning, awakening to our thoughts and beliefs, and this simple point I'm bringing today of disentangling your needs from the strategies to meet them. This is your spiritual gymnasium. So let's talk a little bit about some ways you can begin to do that. First of all, memorize that needs list. Do whatever you do to memorize a needs list. I'll give you some options. Without having the needs list at the ready in a memorized way, your practices will be more difficult. They're all words in our English language. There's just for you to recognize, oh, this word is referring to universal need, this word is not. Okay. For example, I was giving the example of an intimate relationship, and I wanted to say need for romance. I don't think that's a universal need, actually. I think we have a lot of conditioning in lots of parts of the world about that sense of romance, that rush of oxytocin being something we have to thrive and survive. Certainly, at least in the beginning stages, it can be just so pleasant, right? It's just so pleasurable. Wow, it's exciting. Often I think the strategy of romance really nourishes the need of self-acceptance, right? And somehow opens a door that enables us to receive more love than we normally can receive. My suspicion is that has to do with our psychological attachment system. And so if intimacy is a universal need, here's the power, right? If intimate connection is a universal need, and romance is a strategy, one of many strategies, can you feel it? We start to become free. How else could I cultivate intimate connection? I have choices. You have choices. And also, as we remove romance as a universal need and it becomes a strategy, and we cultivate, here's intimate connection at the center, and then here's all these strategies going off, right? Like a sun, center of the sun and the rays. As we do that, we lose that sense of intense hierarchy of strategies, that clinging to my way, it has to be this way. That's a lot of peace for you. That's so much peace when you've cultivated multiple ways to meet a need that you really trust and you can be deeply nourished by. You experience a sense of equanimity and peace. And when one strategy falls away, becomes inaccessible, you don't get desperate or angry. You don't fall apart. You might feel disappointed. Oh, darn. I was moving in that direction, looking forward to that particular strategy, person, thing, job, decision, whatever it is. Feel disappointed because I had a liking for that. I had organized my energy there. And at the same time, coming back to your core and sitting in the universal energy of that need, whatever it was for you. And starting to move your energy to other strategies that you trust equally well. You feel a sense of peace. So maybe that's one of the difficult things about receiving the benefits of distinguishing needs and strategies, is that it really does require this conscious cultivation of a variety of strategies to meet a particular need. It really means learning to trust various ways to meet a particular need. So that's a practice. And so, as I said, coming back to the steps here, the first step is to memorize the needs list so you have it available to you. You could do that the old-fashioned way. You write a sentence with every need. You memorize 5 every day, and then the next day you repeat those 5 aloud and you memorize 5 more, etc. All these mnemonic devices that are out there. You might adapt a practice of having the needs list in a place that you sit, maybe a place you sit every evening or morning with your tea, and take 3 interactions during the day. Could be moments of reactivity or moments of real joy for you, and identify the needs met or unmet or that you perceive to be threatened in a reactive moment. And that way you start to learn the list. You also learn about yourself. For example, if you only do that practice with reactivity, you'll probably find you're identifying the same needs over and over again. Yeah, Wise Heart, we call those tender needs. Not because the needs are tender, but because our relationship to those needs are tender. We don't have as much confidence that they'll be met, and so we more easily perceive a threat. Okay. Maybe I'll just leave you with one last thought here about the power of the distinction between needs and strategies, is that when you are in a conflict with someone, that conflict is always a conflict of strategies, because universal needs are never in conflict. And the most common stuck places are when you say to the other person or to yourself, the need has to be met at a certain time, in a certain way, with a certain person, at a certain place, right? Anytime you stick a need to your specific strategy, I'm breaking it down for you, you're going to be in a conflict with yourself, with life, with someone else. And so if you're in a stuck conflict with someone, then at least on your side, you can identify the needs that are present for you in that situation. Start to identify also, like, where you have a lot of tightness around how those needs are met. write them down so that at least on a piece of paper they can be separate. The need can be separate from the strategy. Just the word itself in one part of the paper, how you want it to go to meet that need on another part of the paper, so you can visually see them as separate. And then you could, with your own guessing, do some guesses for the other person. The other person is more available, of course, and they have some willingness. You could do that with them. Or find a mediator who knows this language and this consciousness to do it with you both. So needs are never in conflict, just the strategies to meet them. Okay. So if you want to dive in more regarding this, invite you to join us for any live class. And also the online learning platform is always available for you. And the class on there's an 8-week series on there. I think it's called Making Requests, in which we really get into the difference between needs and strategies, or requests. Request is a form of strategy to meet our need. When we want to meet our need, we make a request. And there's so much more about this topic than I just shared with you. It's so rich and subtle and deep. So I hope you'll choose to dive into it, either with us on our online learning platform, or with the live class with us, or with another trainer in online communication, or from Wise Heart. Thank you so much for your practice, and thank you for being with me today. Radiating love from my heart to yours.
You can learn more about Mindful Compassionate Dialogue and find free resources, live offerings, and self-paced workshops online at www.wiseheartcommunity.org.